Hello world, this is DJ Craven and you're listening to the Craven Happiness Podcast. This is episode number 4. Thank you for listening. Very excited to introduce my guest, so we'll dive right into that. If you could, for the audience, give us your name and what you do and kind of who you are, a little bit of background, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Hi everybody, I'm Jen McDonough. I am a special ed teacher turned attorney, turned kind of back to special ed teacher because now here at Allegheny College I work part-time in the Disability Services office as academic support specialist. So for half the week I'm in here working with students who need accommodations and making sure that those accommodations are being given and that they don't have any questions about content-specific stuff with their classes. I also, it turns into a life coach a lot of times, which I love. And then the other half of the week I do title type of attorney work.
Okay,
real
great.
estate and
Great. So let's so before we get into all that, let's dial it back a little bit. Where are you originally from?
Okay, so DJ, that's a loaded question.
That's good. We like loaded.
Okay, good.
We've got time for that.
Good. Okay, so I'm an Army brat.
Yes.
And my mom is an Irish immigrant. So,
Okay.
So, she came over as a teenager to Pittsburgh, met my dad at Duquesne. My dad was in ROTC. That's how he was paying for college. He joined the Army, and then I was born in Germany. At the time, it was West Germany.
Yeah.
But I was born in Heidelberg, Germany, and then I grew up all around, mostly Europe. I spent a couple years. My dad taught at West Point for a couple of years, and then we went back to Europe. But we always my dad tried to get European assignments for my mom to be close to home. And so I didn't live in the U.S. until college.
Oh, okay.
So I lived in Germany, Holland, England. We spent a lot of time in Ireland, of course.
Wow.
And then I went to undergrad in Virginia, and I chose James Madison University because my American cousins went there, and I didn't know where else, and I was like, I don't know. So I just followed them.
Yeah.
And their dad had been in the Army too, so we were all sort of raised as siblings. We were on a lot of the same tours together, and so I followed them to school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's I didn't know all of that. I knew that I thought I remember the word Army brat in there, but I didn't realize it was all of that detail. That's pretty cool. So there's so many questions there. So from a bilingual language standpoint, you probably speak multiple languages, or were you primarily still in like an English-speaking bubble throughout this whole process?
Yeah. Well, I could have been. The bases over there have housing and schools. I went to school on bases, but my parents wanted us to experience the economy, the host nation, wherever we were.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow up on base.
Okay.
I did apparently speak German before I spoke English because my nanny was German. But I've lost it all.
Oh, okay.
I know enough Dutch to get by.
Yeah.
But Holland is interesting. The Dutchies really are the friendliest people in the world, and they always wanted to practice English on us. So if they caught that you were American, they would ask if they could speak English to you and sort of practice.
Right.
We got spoiled. And then of course I took Spanish like in high school and
Yeah.
stuff, but that's really it. I'm really not proud to say that.
Yeah.
But
that's okay.
But I could like get us on a bus in Amsterdam and get us to like the museum we wanted to go.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
No, which is very cool. We were I just went a trip, and we actually went through Amsterdam.
Nice.
And everybody in the airport spoke English. And again, it's one of those things I think as an American you're just spoiled because most places you go, somebody speaks English.
Yep.
And it's kind of a unique thing with us being American, and somehow that's intertwined in there.
I know.
It's kind of crazy, but no, that's very cool that you have that experience. Really, most of your adolescence, then, really. I mean, you were overseas, so to speak, all of your adolescence. Now, do you obviously consider yourself then an American, though? It sounds like the way that you're talking and all of that. I mean, obviously you're an American citizen, but but your background is not really here as far as from your adolescent standpoint.
Yeah, that's right. I was actually a dual citizen with Germany until I was 18, and then I had to pick.
Okay.
Because at the time they didn't have reciprocity with us, and so I couldn't keep dual citizenship.
Gotcha.
But so I obviously I kept American.
Yeah, right.
So I really don't. I mean, I went to school with other military brats.
Okay.
And also international students, which is why I have the American accent, and we learned, our curriculum followed American education models, which is why all of us had to come over here to college.
Yeah.
Because the secondary education over there is so much different. We couldn't have gone to like an English university. Their high school, for example, is 5 years, not 4.
Okay.
And I graduated in England on a base.
Gotcha.
So we all ended up coming back over here.
Okay.
And we're scattered now, of course.
Yeah.
But we in fact, even like class reunions, we pick every 5 years we pick just a random city around the world, and we go and visit because nobody's at the base anymore.
Right,
you know,
right,
so
absolutely. So is that kind of, you're describing them as almost kind of like a family? So like you ended up doing a lot of, with your dad and the different tours and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You guys kind of somewhat moved around a lot. So you knew certain people for long periods of time.
Oh yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you bring that up because when we lived in Holland for the longest period of my life, but it was on 2 different bases. But so the second base was it was right after the Berlin Wall came down, and so President Clinton at the time was drawing down a lot of bases. We didn't need the same military coverage that we had.
Right.
Once the Berlin Wall came down, so my base in Holland actually closed.
Okay.
And so all of us had to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of us ended up at the next base that I went to, which was a base in England. A lot of us ended up there.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
From Holland.
Yeah.
So even my teachers who were the teachers over there are considered civilians. They're not military. They all moved with us too.
Oh, okay.
Because my mom actually taught too, so
okay.
she had assignments as well.
Right. Yeah.
And so so.
Very interesting. No,
yeah.
that's pretty cool. So a lot of things. What I like to do, just again, trying to give context for the audience for who the guest is.
Yeah.
You moved around a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
so to kind of take me through what that experience is. As a child, adolescence, you're just trying to find yourself. We all know the difficulties of that, and we are slowly seeing. I know that you have a daughter, and we're going to slowly see that in our kids of the troubles that they're going to have, just let alone in one place, let alone being bouncing around. Now, it sounded like you had a little bit of support, so to speak, and there were other kids doing the same thing that you were doing. I'm sure that had to have a lot of comfort in that. But maybe take me through a little bit of that, because I got to imagine that was not very easily done.
Yeah, I think actually, for the kids, the good thing was everybody's a new kid at some point.
Right.
And so we all had the empathy that you need to sort of embrace a new kid into school. I know for our kids who've lived here their whole lives, a new kid comes and it's something to talk about.
Yeah.
But on a base, it's like, well, yeah. 25% of the school each year was new.
Gotcha.
And so that helped a lot. But also for me, and definitely in terms of happiness too, I was an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And so sports really is what was my survival.
Yep.
And I made friends immediately because whatever season I moved to a new place in I joined the sport, whatever it was. And I was lucky enough to immediately have friends like that. They do say about brats that we make friends faster because we do have to adapt, and we are new all the time. And so it is a really familial, atmosphere.
Yeah.
But I cannot overstate how much sports helped me with that.
Yeah, I could see that. I could totally see how, because I was a sports as well, all growing up and through college and still to this day. So I can totally see how sports would certainly help mend that gap a little bit, because you've got instantly a connection, right? You've got an instant commonality that you can talk about, that you can participate in, and you've got an instant in there. And also, I guess too, if you're in an environment where, like you said, 25% is new all the time, it's almost like a normality a little bit that there's going to be somebody new coming in. So I'm sure that helped a lot to it as well.
Yeah, it was huge. I think it was harder for spouses, to be honest. Now that I'm a spouse,
right?
I can't imagine moving every 3 years the way we did if I, for my mom,
right?
For example, but they did the same thing. You make friends with people you have things in common with, and the military has structures set up for that. Every place you move, they match you with a sponsor family, and that family usually has kids the same age as yours, and so you always move in with at least one family that's showing you around.
Certainly.
And so those were usually our first friends.
Yeah.
And ended up being our best friends too by the end of the tour. So, but I even now, it definitely changes your perspective on everything, because even now, every 3 years, I have a clock in my head that, like, every 3 or 4 years, I'm like, where are we going next?
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready to.
Right. It almost feels stale a little bit because you're
Yeah.
just used to it, and that's what I was going to say. I was going to use that word. It's so funny to use it, of perspective. It probably gives you a different perspective on people, such as myself. Like, I grew up here in Meadville. I was 18 years through high school. I went to Barron, for 5 years, which is just right up the road.
Yep.
Yes, I did move, and I lived in North Carolina for 2 years, which gave me a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a whole, North Carolina, that's like a
different
whole
region.
world. Yeah,
Yep.
it's like, let alone different countries, and
Yep.
I'm sure you've got a very unique perspective on things when you're talking about people that haven't moved around a lot and haven't been able to experience some of those different experiences that you have. And like I said, perspective is a word that I like to use in the realm of happiness, because perspective, it means a lot. It can shed a lot of things onto different people's lives, and a lot of judgment, I think, comes off of misperception, and I think a lot of judgment comes off of just not having the context of really what the other person's actually living on a day-to-day basis.
I totally agree. I think perspective is everything.
Yeah.
Everything when it comes to happiness.
Yeah.
And perspective, although I think it's obviously sort of defined by your life experience, there is a choice to it too. I think you can be open to gaining perspective. I mean, even here, you grew up here, but it's a college town.
Yeah.
I was just in a training with a woman from Germany. I mean, there's diversity here too.
Yeah.
You just have to find it, and that all comes from your perspective, I think, and whether you want to invite that in or not.
Yeah.
And so for me, I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think everybody to some extent can find new life experiences wherever they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like you said, it's somewhat of a lot of it is a choice. And I think and I believe that happiness can be a choice as well. I mean, yes, it can be difficult. It can be a difficult choice.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be an easy choice.
Yes.
But I think happiness has a choice element to it. There's no doubt about that. And I certainly believe that of waking up each day and making the decision of, okay, maybe I don't feel that great, or maybe I don't feel like being optimistic and all of that. But again, that's okay. And I like to think of it of, don't judge yourself just as well as you don't want others to judge you in that same light. And what I mean by that is that if you wake up someday and you're just not really feeling that great, and you come to a 4-way stop sign and hey, listen, I'm going, and I just you go blind somebody and you didn't let them go through. You can't judge yourself on, listen, that's not how I felt, and I went through. That doesn't all of a sudden make you the mean person, right?
Sure.
So I think that kind of is in there as well. But another question I like to ask everybody is that, what kind of kid were you in the lunchroom? Look, you describe who you were. I can kind of somewhat guess the answer, but let's go ahead and go through the exercise anyways of what kind of kid were you, in the lunchroom?
Well, so I was not a lunch bringer.
Okay.
I bought my lunch.
Okay, that's important.
Or with the tickets.
Yeah, one or the other.
We didn't
usually
get to buy. We had tickets or whatever. But I was not a bringer.
Okay.
But I always invited. I mean, it was if somebody was sitting alone, that I didn't like that. That was that I was really.
Uncomfortable?
Yeah, I had a sensitivity to that or
Yeah.
something, and I don't know. If that's like a past life thing.
Yeah.
But I had a sensitivity that was like, no, I don't like that. And so I would invite them over. I was definitely, I'm an extrovert. I definitely was a talker in my group. But we always invited the new kids or the kids who might be sitting alone.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool, and that speaks to, again, would have somewhat guessed that for sure, based on just even these last 10 minutes or whatever it's been, that would have certainly been in there, and the little interactions that we've had. So that's pretty cool. Again, I think it's somewhat of a fun question, kind of gets you a little bit of some people's background and kind of what's there and everything. So, all right, so we go to James Madison for college, university. Is it college? James Madison University?
University,
right?
yeah.
University. I'm assuming law school comes into place somewhere in there. There's obviously some secondary education in there. So where do we go from, into James Madison? Anything you want to talk about there, and then kind of the next steps going forward?
Well, James Madison was incredible. It's the best choice I ever made to that point in my life.
That's great.
It ended up being a really good fit.
And was it just a purely blind decision, like you said before? There was
Yeah.
a cousin going there, or I went there, and you're just, yeah, that's where I want to go.
Yeah, I literally, I even applied late, actually. So I got in. I had not set foot in the state of Virginia until orientation
Right.
for JMU. And it was amazing. I joined Alpha Phi Omega, which is a service, co-ed service fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much, I mean, almost all of my friends from college are from there. And we did service we had to do 50 hours of service a semester, which is a decent amount.
Yeah.
So that gave me a lot of opportunity to get out into the community a little bit. We could choose from various service projects what to do. That was really fun. I did intramural sports there because that's what I knew to do to meet people.
Yeah.
And then I would say it was pretty. It was huge in shaping my life. Probably. I ended up. I'm gay, and I had my first girlfriend there.
Okay.
And that was a scary thing.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
What time, just again, not to you're going to date yourself, but generally when the world of years, where are we in the world of, like, what year is it? Like, what?
1998.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Again, just trying to, in my own mind, of where that is, and, it's a difference of 98 or 2008. I mean, there's a difference there as far
difference,
as
DJ, yeah.
whether you're having a girlfriend or not.
Cool
Again, I'm not an expert, but...
It was not cool yet.
Yeah. Okay.
In fact, it was the year that Matthew Shepard was killed in, he was killed in Wyoming. He was a college kid, and a hate crime victim. Mm-hmm. And it was actually what inspired me to come out. And so I came out in rage, not celebration.
Okay.
So that happened at JMU, and then I got into grad school, and I went to University of Maryland for special education, and I specialize in secondary ed, so I ended up teaching high school learning support.
Okay.
So I got out of school in Maryland, and it was way too expensive to live there as a teacher. By myself. I was like, I'll never own a house. Like, this is crazy. So I was living with a bunch of guys, like friends.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, where do I kind of have roots in this country? And Pittsburgh is the only place. So
literally, you're saying in this country.
Yeah.
Like, you can actually say that.
I can actually say that. So I moved to Pittsburgh, and my first teaching job was actually at the juvenile detention center there. And so I had a lot of kids whose lives were just bigger than school. And so I made sure that the law in the U.S. is that if a student is a special ed student and has been diagnosed and has the legal right to accommodations, if they are anywhere for more than 72 hours, including jail, they have to have those accommodations.
Okay.
And so that was my first job. I made sure that any student that was there for 10 days, 2 weeks, a month, got their accommodations in school.
Right.
And they went to school in prison. And it was considered a privilege almost. If you misbehaved, somebody came to your cell and gave you schooling for the day. But if you stayed in line, you came to school.
Right. So that exit for a little while was a big deal.
It was great.
Right. Yeah.
It was
It's like almost like a weird work release in some sort of manner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
They got gym class. We all ate lunch together. It's co-ed.
Yeah.
So they got to hang out with girls, guys.
Right.
And so that was a big deal for them. And so I made sure that happened. And then I got out into the public schools. I ended up having a lot of the same kids, as you can imagine, because they get out.
Yeah,
and they get back home. And
right.
So that was actually a really huge benefit that I didn't foresee, was that I had already established a rapport with some of these kids in a really hard environment.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time they're more relaxed and at home and in a little bit of a healthier place, they already trusted me.
Right.
And that felt really awesome.
Yeah. And this is outside of Pittsburgh somewhere?
This is in downtown Pittsburgh.
This is downtown Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh Public Schools. So I did that for 3 years, and then I decided to go to law school.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so before we go to law school,
yeah,
Where was the driving factor to get into, special education? I'm sure there's some sort of seeds of the whole idea of somebody sitting alone in the lunchroom, those sort of things. Again, it's all making sense.
I feel very seen right now.
But just maybe talk through that a little bit of, because again, say God bless you, so to speak, but I mean, not everybody's going to wake up and say, hey, I want to work with special needs kids, or anybody that is going to be, a difficult in nature of a kid. So you talk me through where that decision kind of made, and again, throughout maybe the James Madison graduate school process.
Well, I think it's a lot of factors. Number one, being the new kid, I knew what that felt like. Number two, being an athlete, I like underdogs.
Who doesn't?
Right. Number three, and this is a door we've not gone through yet, and we can totally turn around real quick, but I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, so I was I was in therapy my whole life. My dad's now recovering, which is awesome, but at the time he was not, and so we were all very affected by that, and so I developed a pretty huge need for helping other people feel like everything's okay, and we can all
totally see that.
Let's get through this together, and we can fit in and whatever. And then of course, being gay, I was sort of an underdog again, and so I think that drove me to special ed in particular. Education is just in my blood. My mom is a teacher. My dad was and is still now actually a college professor, and so I mean, once he retired from the Army, that's what he does, and so teaching was always something I wanted to do. But I did have some sort of gut feeling, I think, that it wouldn't be forever. I knew I would probably burn out at some point, and obviously going into an area like special ed, you burn out much quicker. I
would imagine.
The average career span for a special educator is 3 years, which is what I lasted. And my friends who are still doing it are just incredible. Incredible people. I think that's what drove me to that specific area.
And it makes a whole lot of sense. Do you think that you were, because another big word that I like to use is self-awareness, right? And I think that that's one of the keys of many of them with perspective and judgment is to being happy, is to understanding yourself.
Me too.
The most out of anything. And do you think, because for me it was not certainly in college, it was much later. I understood myself a little bit, I think, through college. I think it took several years later to actually understand myself. Do you think it was just you were following your gut, or do you think you were self-aware enough to know that that's kind of why you were going there? Is that kind of what, this is retroactively thinking of these are the boxes and this is why I did this?
No, I wasn't even close enough.
No,
not even close.
All right.
I'm still learning.
Right, which we all are.
It was gut. It was all gut. I've gotten through most of life on gut feelings, even still. So
it's a great way to live.
I've been lucky enough I've got the Irish luck, I guess, because it has kept me afloat. But that I say all of those factors in complete retrospect. I don't think I could have named a single one at the time.
Which is, again, understandable. I just sometimes like to bring that to everybody's minds. Sometimes, with the audience of that. We talk about self-awareness, and I talk to, you're the third person in a row that I've talked to that's clearly very self-aware. And I try to get to the point of what you made for me of that we don't know that we don't know it yet, right?
No.
I mean,
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And it takes a long time to get to be self-awareness, and we're all going to continue to grow and all that. So that's kind of why I went to that. So, all right, so back to the story. We go to, we're getting somewhat burnt out in Pittsburgh. We're getting to the point of, well, you want to go to grad school.
So my actual vision initially was education advocacy. Because I had taught in the jail system and in public schools, inner city public school, which is severely underfunded in the United States in particular, but Pittsburgh too. I thought these kids need advocates, really, for some of the legal proceedings they go through, whether they're suing for accommodations or whether they're in trouble and they need a public defender or something.
Right.
So that was my vision going to law school. Law school was great, amazing, hardest thing I've ever done, but I loved it. But I got out in 2009, which was the recession. And so no education firms in Pittsburgh, there were only two anyway, they weren't hiring.
Yeah.
Nobody was hiring.
Nobody, yeah.
And so that led me to my next door. Again, gut feeling was like the one area of law that's growing in Pennsylvania was oil and gas.
Right.
And so I did that, and I've done that since. And then I've been an adjunct where I can. I've adjuncted at Edinburgh, Pitt, Titusville, and so I've just jumped around like that until I got here where I could actually I have an office now.
Yeah, right, yeah. It's just glorious.
Right, it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
But so I've always had that need to be with students.
Yeah.
And young people.
Right.
Young students. And I love the environment of a university or a college, like just it's like in the ether. You can just feel like ideas.
Yeah,
like
it
it's
is,
just
yeah.
the coolest thing. It's like buzzing, you know.
Right, yeah.
And so I always wanted that. So I did the oil and gas to pay the bills, and I've learned a lot about that, about life with that too.
Certainly.
And finding happiness with the lack of security.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, because I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah. Oil and gas, you find that out really quickly.
Exactly. So, and that was a big choice too. I had to learn how to be happy even if I might not have a job on Monday.
Right.
You know, which has happened multiple times, you know, in this career.
Yeah.
So that's what led me to law school, and then obviously I sort of had an offshoot.
Yeah, right. All of these other little offshoots.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's very cool, and I think that, you know, it's not a surprise that you've always kind of come back to that education and all of that. And do you see yourself, you know, from a future standpoint, do you kind of see yourself continuing down that path and maybe even furthering yourself in the education world? I mean, it sounds like that's definitely more, I don't want to say a passion, but kind of a passion in the education world specifically, whether it has to do with law or special needs or diversity or whatever the case is. It sounds like that's kind of the direction that you really want to go towards.
Yeah, although I have to say I've developed a love for contracts.
Oh yeah.
Having done what I've done with oil and gas, and so I really do still like that. I would love to still have, you know, sort of a side project going all the time with that, but being full-time at a college is definitely, I think I would be at a place in my professional life where I could say, like, I love what I do.
Right, yeah. And that's what I call is the Holy Grail, right?
Yep.
Like, if you can wake up and you got to be good at it to be the Holy Grail, and then you also have to love it. And those two things meshed together, you can really start moving some things very quickly.
I agree, and I think it's rare.
Yeah, it is, and that's kind of almost somewhat part of this journey, right? Of to try to maybe inspire somebody to be happy, and wherever that is, you know, like you're saying, you know, maybe, you know, oil and gas thing was just to pay the bills, but it was also to have some of these side things where you are somewhat happy, and maybe that side thing is, you know, going and playing softball on the weekends or 3 times a week, or going and watching your kid play, or coaching your kid play, or growing, help growing a family, or there's so many different things of what it could be.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes the ends and justifying the means and all of those things that we all know about that I think can be just in there, right? It's just a matter of trying to find it, and again, the whole purpose of this is just to make one person happier.
Yeah,
right?
Which would be
just to
awesome.
try to give the validation of just find somebody to have them give the option to say, listen, I want to be happy today.
Yeah.
Even if it is just for a day. It doesn't have to be forever.
Oh, right.
Even if it's just for today or right now or just in this moment.
Right. Yeah. Nothing's permanent anyway.
Yeah.
So,
and that's very cool and awesome, and hopefully hopefully you're able to continue with all of that.
Yeah. Thanks.
So a couple other questions that I like to talk about and get to. So what would you say would be, we kind of talked about it a little bit, so kind of you can repeat some things certainly by any means, but how would you define success if you had to define it?
That is a great question and actually very difficult. I think if you'd asked me at any point in my life up until this phase of my life, which would probably be motherhood. Motherhood, I think, changed me. But I would have said, like, you know, making money, enough money to live, and all that stuff. Although I know that that's a necessary thing, I would not say that anymore. I think success is going to bed every night feeling like you're proud of who you are, and you're proud of the way you treat people. You're proud of the people around you. I think it's so much less tangible and materialistic than I ever thought it was before. And I do think having my daughter change that for
Yeah.
me. And like therapy and stuff too.
Yeah,
Of course.
right.
But like I think that I think that's success. I think
Yeah.
feeling like you were the best person you could be today, no
Right.
matter what you did, whether
Yeah.
you worked or you didn't work or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's such an awesome answer, right? I mean, you said that it was a difficult question. You said it was difficult to answer, but you answered it in such a way that was unbelievable, not only for my podcast, because that fits right in line with what I've said before.
Right.
It's not about the money you make. It's not about what your house looks like or the items that you buy or what your car looks like or any of those things. It's just not, right? And then you can get into this level of a little bit of a debate and different things of what that looks like for everybody. But in my opinion, it's all those things are really to impress others and not necessarily to impress yourself.
For sure.
If some of them, for some reason, are to impress yourself, then go all for it. Like if that
agree.
Gucci bag makes you feel better,
yeah.
like you buy that Gucci bag,
buy
girlfriend,
yourself
right?
a present.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean
yeah,
that is all. That's what it is. But the minute that you're buying a fancy car to try to throw it in the face of somebody that you don't even like,
right?
That's not the direction you want to go,
no.
right? That's not the whole point of this. And if you are, again, and I would just encourage you to ask, the people in the audience, just to think about it of why are you buying those things?
Yeah.
Are you buying them to make yourself feel good instead of having, again, just trying to flash it for keeping up with the Joneses or whatever the cliche term is of the time.
For sure. And I think the best way, if you don't know the answer, the best way to find the answer is once you've bought the thing, do you feel the satisfaction that is the void filled?
Right.
Like the craving that you had to buy that thing.
Yeah.
Is it gone now?
Right.
Because if it's not, you bought that for the wrong reason.
Yeah, something else. Yeah, exactly.
So
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
You totally bought it for something else in another way.
Yeah. If you bought the Gucci bag and you're like, yes, I feel this Gucci bag, that's all I needed, then you bought it for the right reason.
Right.
But if you don't feel that after you buy something, you've gone off the path.
Yeah, and it's part of that. Another thing that I always talk about, or I try to talk about, is the trying. Right? You don't know, as you mentioned, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you've got to try those things in order to see if that's where it is or not.
For sure.
And sometimes you got to try it a couple times. Sometimes you got to try it for a good period of time. I mean, I'm doing a podcast. I just started it. I was an itch. I was going to try to scratch it. I'm going to see if it actually is satisfying or not. We're going to see what goes with this. I have no idea. You just try it. And I think I try to let people know that you're doing it for yourself, and that's the reasons that you do it, right? You're not doing it for somebody else, like we've been talking about, and if you are doing it for yourself, then that's where it's going to get good. It gets really good, right?
For sure.
There's this other term that I like to use, and it's selfishly selfless.
Oh, I love that term.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've probably heard that before. Again, I didn't make this up. I just have heard it, and I try to use it a lot because it just makes sense. Where you're doing something that's selfishly. You're selfishly doing it because it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
But the act is ultimately selfless.
Yep.
Right?
I love that.
The simplest way I have to explain it is that you're walking into a market or a door, some sort of door that doesn't hold up open by itself.
Right.
And there's somebody behind you that you open the door for and you let them go through. Opening the door for somebody else, right? Because it makes you feel good, but it's also a selfless act that you're doing something for somebody else with you want nothing in return. You don't want them to buy you a turkey when you go in the grocery store. You just want to hold the door open for them.
Yeah.
And the intent of doing things is kind of melded into there as well. Of it's what is the intent of what you're doing, and it can be so powerful.
Oh yeah, it's huge. I feel like it's at least 50% of the task, don't you think?
Right, absolutely.
Like and the thing is, it should be as important to you that it feels good to you.
Right.
As it does. I mean, there's a reason on an airplane that they tell you to put on your mask first.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
if you're not taking care of yourself, nobody else is going to feel what they need to feel from you either.
Right.
So
absolutely.
I love that term.
Yeah.
Selfishly selfless.
Other thing that I like to talk about is, and I don't think I've talked about it yet, is a little bit more into diving into judgment.
Okay.
So we talked about it a little bit earlier, and I just want to kind of get your thoughts on of sometimes your insecurities can hold people back, can hold you back. I think that you certainly some of the things that you've already said are very obvious that you're definitely of that candidate where a lot of times your insecurities seem like the boogeyman. so to speak.
Yeah.
And until once you turn the light on or you open the closet door and you show the world the boogeyman, all of a sudden he's not a boogeyman anymore. And by kind of exposing some of those insecurities to the world or to whomever your circle is, sometimes can give you like this almost freedom a little bit.
Huge, yeah.
Right?
Huge
I mean,
freedom.
I'm assuming that has happened throughout your life. It sounds like maybe multiple times.
Yeah, probably.
And to be able to, so just kind of talk about that a little bit of somebody that's literally have some pretty concrete examples of some of that happening.
Well, the fact that you use the term closet door, I mean.
Yeah. I didn't do that on purpose.
But it works, right?
It works.
It works. No, yeah, that was obviously my biggest fear growing up. I always knew, even before I had a vocabulary for it, I knew I was different than other girls in particular. And I didn't know why, I didn't know what it was, I didn't know the name of it, whatever. One thing about growing up in the military, there's racial diversity everywhere, and it's incredible to be able to live in that.
Yeah.
But when my dad was in the military, when I was growing up, there was not any other diversity in terms of LGBTQ that was not embraced. In fact, in the beginning of my life, it was criminalized.
Yeah.
Then Don't Ask, Don't Tell happened, but that was still horrific and scary, and it was still very much like, Don't Ask, Don't Tell is exactly the boogeyman.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Like, well, I can't talk about this.
Yeah.
Even though talking about it would, like you say, make it be much less scary.
Much less of a thing.
Exactly. The taboo is gone if you just talk about it. But so I grew up around all that. Also, my mom is Irish Catholic, and so that was terrifying as well. So I definitely I cannot overstate how often it was on my mind.
Yeah.
And before I had the vocabulary for it, even worse after, and just trying to figure out if it would ever be okay, or if I would ever be able to at least change myself so I don't have to do it, like be that person.
Right.
And I tried very hard before I came out to just like fit in.
Right.
You know? And it just wasn't something I could do. I did not know happiness until I just was who I am.
Right.
Like until I was like, you know what? And I mean, it wasn't a peaceful process coming out. My mom wasn't supportive right away. My dad immediately was, but my mother wasn't. Most of my friends were fine, but again, it was still a pretty turbulent time for that. And there was still, I mean, for men in my community, the AIDS crisis obviously has never stopped, but it was still the peak of it was around that time. Hate crimes, we weren't protected by hate crimes, all kinds of, there was just fear everywhere.
Absolutely.
And so, but like you said, just saying it, just finally being like, you know what, I can't fake this anymore. Like, I just can't do it anymore.
Right.
Kicking that door open was like, oh my God. Like, even the year or so that my mom and I really butted heads about it, and she really didn't have the reaction I needed from a mother.
Yeah.
Even that year, I was like, no, but I'm going to be all right. Because at least everybody now knows who I am.
Right.
I mean, I cannot tell you the lengths I went to cover that up for my whole life.
I'm sure.
And so, yeah, that was huge. It was huge. And yeah, I mean, people judged.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people might still. I don't know if it's the same
Maybe
anymore.
Not.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was that totally turned my life. It just 180. I was able to learn so much more about myself that I didn't realize was connected to that core of who I was. I was able to become so much more self-aware, just in general, just things I liked, things I didn't like, people I liked to hang out with, people I didn't like to hang out with, because all of that was, I was tunnel vision, before I came out.
Yeah.
Just, okay, I'm going to hang out with who I need to hang out with so that the perspective from everybody else is, that's a straight girl.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, all of that stuff. And so I hung out with jerks sometimes.
Right.
Like, and then once I realized, like, no, I actually don't care if you realize I'm gay or not. Then it was like, oh, I also don't like you much. Like, I'd rather, you know,
hang out with somebody else.
Yeah, hang out with somebody who makes me feel a little better. So, Yeah, I would say in terms of judgment, that was
Yeah.
the Holy Grail.
Yeah, right. That's the Holy Grail. There's no
So,
doubt about that. Yeah. Some of the things that I like to talk about in regards to that, and I guess before I go there, I commend you, obviously, and anybody that does that. I mean, again, that's not that. It's one of those things where, you know, I just got done talking about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean,
right.
That's really not that hard compared to growing up with what you had to grow up with and where you had to go. So total commitment there.
Really
You're not asking for it, yeah.
with Kilimanjaro, trust me.
That wasn't a plug there. I'm just trying to compare it in real time.
Yeah.
And you know, and can only appreciate what all of that meant. Having said all of that, this maybe not something as heavy as that, but I still think it somewhat applies to that. Is that it's almost like, okay, yeah, the boogeyman's not scary anymore, as I mentioned earlier. I like to also reference, and I heard it the other day, of that there's going to be a portion of people, a good portion of people, that don't even care about your insecurities, right?
For sure, yeah.
So a lot of insecurities might not be as heavy as coming out of the closet. Some of them may be something small, like smaller, right?
Yeah.
Like even minuscule, that you're making up into this big thing.
Yeah.
And guess what? Everybody has their own problems,
Yeah.
right? I mean, everybody else has an issue. Everybody else has their own insecurities. They really don't care about yours.
Right.
Even some people in your inner circle don't really care about your insecurities.
No.
So it's a lot easier. Let's just go ahead and expose them. Let's just say what they are, and then we don't need to worry about that.
Yeah, and you're so right. My mom used to always say, like, nobody's worried about you.
Yeah,
I mean, and this was like
exactly.
when I would be like, oh, I don't like this shirt. I look stupid in this, you know, in high school. Like,
Yeah, right.
I hate this shirt. I don't want to wear this shirt. And my mom would be like, nobody's gonna be looking at you today.
Right.
Everyone else is worried about their shirts.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
and it is all perspective. I mean, coming out was a, I guess in the grand scheme of things in life, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. What matters is who the feeler is, right? And so, yeah, that feels big to me, and maybe this person doesn't have the same gravity to their issue, but it still feels the same to them.
Yeah,
I mean, I guarantee you, like, they're like,
Absolutely.
no, I am as scared as you are, and even if it's, you know, not the same sort of life-changing issue.
Yeah.
And so you have to respect that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You have to respect it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to respect it, and I'm not trying to say, and I know you're not suggesting it, that I'm not respecting it. It's just one of those things that's a perfect example of kind of shedding the light or opening the door, so to speak, and it actually then it leads you to happiness, which is what this whole thing for me is all about.
And you can look back and be like, oh, that was really small.
Yeah. It really is. Like, it really is. Like, it's like nobody cares when you're in high school about the pimple on your face.
Exactly.
Everybody else got their own pimples, right? Like, they don't care. Really, it doesn't matter.
Although there are still ones that keep me up, like at night now. I'm
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, that was so embarrassing.
No, there's no doubt about it. No doubt about it at all. Well, I can tell you what, I don't really have a whole lot of things unless you have something else that you want to bring up in this open platform. But this has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I really appreciate you doing this. Thanks for letting me just saying yes to it. I mean, I've been surprised where almost every single person I've asked, they've said yes. So this might be not as hard as maybe I was thinking it was going to be.
I hope not. Well, that's
unbelievable.
I'll give a quick plug.
Okay.
So, looking for happiness, you say yes to everything.
Yeah,
I learned that a long time ago. Don't say no to things. Just
True.
if you don't like them, okay.
Yeah.
So you learned you don't like them.
Right.
But maybe you'll love them.
Right.
So yeah.
And you don't know what's going to happen, right?
That's right.
You just don't know.
Say yes, always.
Well, we are done saying yes for now, so I appreciate everybody listening to this, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thanks, DJ.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was awesome.